it's Dave. Welcome back to my channel. So this is my pedal board that I use for the Vox Night Train. Just wanted to show it to you here. I got the poly tuner. I got the Analog Man Mini Bicomp going into the Animal. That then comes down to the boiling point, into the Timmy, which I use as a solo boost, the Diamond Tremolo, which goes into the Line 6 MM4, and then up to the DL4 delay and out. And that's the board that I use for just when I'm using, like if I go to open jams, and for when I use when I use my Vox Night Train, which is a small 15 watt amp, and I have a small, I have a 12-inch speaker with that in a custom cabinet. So as you can see on the board also that I'm not really using, I don't use Velcro. What I use is, I use a Scotch product called Dual Lock. You'll see it at Staples. Sometimes they call it Super Lock, but it is this right here. It is so much stronger than Velcro. The pedals don't wiggle. It almost feels like they're glued on, and it's easy to peel off. Here is a pedal of mine. This is a Stonehead Fuzz by Rebel Effects. A great pedal. It's a basic clone of the damn Meathead, and you can go up, you can go dark or light with it. And just so you can see on the back is why I wanted to show you is how I cut up the Dual Lock. So when it goes on the board, there's the opposite there, and it goes on like that, and then it basically doesn't move. That is the way that I would suggest that you do it instead of using, I know pedal trains come with Velcro. I just throw them out. It's unusable to me. It becomes wiggly and everything else. Not my thing. So in that respect, I am going to be I'm waiting for my bomb distortion to come in before I start moving my board around, and I'm going to take off my buffer and put the OCD on, like I said before. And then I'll go and film some more of the band stuff coming out. So I've actually found some footage that I had on a DVD of my old band, The Big Angry, and I think it's from like 15 years ago. I was playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and I'm going to put a song at the end of this one here so you can see it, and hope you like that. Actually, I read Paul Stanley's book recently, and I was going to talk about that, and then I figured, well, I will say this. I've read Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley's book, and I really liked Ace's book. I thought it was concise and to the point and brought up a lot of cool things. I thought Paul's was riddled with like a lot of information that, number one, I don't know how he would remember the details and so much stuff. And then as we get more to recent times, he just remembers so much and has to tell us every little piece of minutia, like when he asks his wife to dinner and he's describing what he's going to make her. I don't give a shit what you're going to make her. I don't want to hear you complain in the book several times that people accuse you of being gay. It's not so much gay as it is being a nebbish when you're sitting there like, you can have swordfish with the spinach, and you start really getting real descriptive. At that point, I'm like, you know what? You invited her, you're going to make dinner, all right? I don't need to hear your menu. It comes across as like real nose up in the air. I just found it annoying. Other than that in the book, there's other things that I have to say about the book. There's many times, in Gene's book too, I've only known because I've seen clips on YouTube, you both call out Ace as being anti-Semitic, and I think if you really believed it, and it wasn't you just making a passing comment to sell books or to disparage him, that you wouldn't be talking to him ever again. But here's Gene a couple of days ago going on stage with him playing Parasite and some other song. Paul went and did a free song, Fire and Water, on Ace's new record. And it's like, if you really felt that way about him, I don't feel that you would be associating with him or continuing to now that you're out with your feeling. So I do feel that at some point it's like, for your own self-benefit of selling a book and making it more interesting and maybe disparaging them, for your book. I just feel like I'm just saying, because if you really felt like that he was, and that he had a problem with being an anti-Semite, I can't imagine that you would be willing to go after you've come out with it, than to say, well, we're still going to go work together. I just found it to be like self-serving. You can see in Paul's book he's super defensive about some of the songs, and then in the 80s, those songs, well, I think from Destroyer on, I'm not a huge, like, I grew up on Kiss, and I grew up on the second three albums were the albums that I was like really into as a kid. Rock and Roll Over, Destroyer, and Love Gun. And then Kiss Alive 2, and I was in. Now I have a hard time listening to anything after Kiss Alive. I just feel like I thought the songs were clever in the beginning, and they were like hungry rock and roll songs and good. And I thought as they got on, as the band became cartoonish, that so did the songs. They just became, even in the production, it became a cartoonish thing. And the funny thing is, they talk about Bob Ezrin like he's the genius. And I think Destroyer is the worst of those three. I think Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun are much better records. And anyone who knows me will tell you what I think of Eddie Kramer. I don't think much of him. As a producer, he does like a lot of seminars. And when he does seminars, he's always talks about the gigs that he was the engineer on, but not the producer. And if you ask him about any of the Kiss stuff, he like snubs his nose at it, like, oh, I don't want to talk. Well, that's the stuff you're actually responsible for, And in producing an album, I do think that the producer's somewhat responsible for the quality of the content, because, this is something you're producing, and if it's not onto your level or you don't think it's good enough, you should be challenging the band. George Martin, I think, was a great producer in that he challenged the Beatles to better the material and to reach deep and come up with some clever stuff. He's also produced other bands, and I think all those records that I've heard I really liked. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about, if you've read Paul's book and you have comments about it, please comment and let me know what you thought. A jury's still not out for me yet. I mean, there were some parts about it I liked. I have to say, once we got into the Doc McGee era, I completely started losing interest in the minutia of what was being said and everything. And, there's like a lot of sour grapes going on. That's all I heard was sour grapes. Instead of like, hearing about like, Paul claims he's a great songwriter, then tell me about these songs where you wrote and what was going through your mind and who were they about, and let me look at your material that way, because I feel like your songs are vapid, and then when you talk about them, you talk about them as if they're empty, they have nothing, and then you have an attitude about it. But anyways, that being said, I don't want to go on and on about it. Just giving my opinion about what I thought of the book. I do think if you're going to read any of the Kiss books, the Ace book so far for me was a very enjoyable read. And I agree with Ace on a lot of stuff about the material, about the band being somewhat of a circus. It's funny, Paul doesn't really see that until Dynasty, where he starts thinking that they're in costume and that it's a little bit flamboyant. And it's like, go back to Destroyer. That was like when the band jumped the shark. But I'm a huge Kiss fan. I like, as far as the first three albums, and I do like some of the stuff on the second three. And I think Dynasty had some good writing on it. I think Ace had some of the best writing on it. I think Paul Sure Knows Something is a great song, and I think I Was Made for Loving You, even though it's not a Kiss song, and it probably should have never been released as a Kiss song. Could have been a song for somebody else, but I think it's a good song. And his vocal at the end, when he starts doing all the falsetto stuff, I think he really was, that was his shining moment singing. I'm not a huge fan of Paul's voice. I like Gene's voice better in the band, but I think that was like a really big moment as far as like for what he could do. I think that was really, really good. And you know, and I think he seemed a little dismissive of it, you know, he really argues his point about in the 80s when they were a hair band, how he was fighting for the band. I think maybe you should have given up the fight. It didn't matter anyways. Because once Doc McGee came in and you started doing the reunion and you brought all four guys back, that's when everybody that was my age was, you know, in their 30s and going, yeah, I'm going to go see the show. So I went to the reunion. I was at the LA Forum in 1996 and I saw them. My brother and I, we loved it. It was a great show. I mean, we were close enough that when the flash pots went off, our seat's temperature raised about 20 degrees, but far enough away that we could walk away hearing fine. Anyways, it was a good show. Didn't want to go off on stuff today. Didn't really have that much to talk about. Just I did want to show you about the dual lock and how to use it, and then I also wanted to show you that pedal board just to see it. And also when I held it, you could see that the pedals weren't moving. Nothing was, you know, it's a real solid situation. But that being said, very good.
You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today. You're right on target. You're right on the money, everything you said.